All right. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, everybody. David Green, alcoholic addict from Oklahoma. Grateful to be here. Grateful for a recovery date of August 8th, 1994 in Alcoholics Anonymous, October 1st of 2019 in an S fellowship that brought emotional freedom through sexual lust and acting out. Very grateful to have used the big book during that process to find the solution, as I always had, but only in a much deeper way, a way that we've been looking at over the past many weeks now. I don't even know how many. We're up around 23 or 4, somewhere into there. So we've been doing this for a long time. We've come through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous very slow, very thorough. We've looked at what the trouble really is. We've put our finger on the weak item, as the book says. We've seen that self manifested in various ways is what had defeated us, not lust, not drinking, not drugs, not over/under eating or any of that stuff. That's the flea. That's not the bug. The bug is self. So the book promised that once we moved into this higher state of consciousness, that we would begin to have a relationship with our Creator, much like Bill talked about in his story. My friend suggested when these things were done that I'd enter up on a new relationship with my Creator. He said that I would have the elements of a way of living which answered all my problems, not just a few, not just this, all of them. And so as we move through this, when we come to this work, we're usually, something has driven us here, definitely. And we think it's outer. We look at lust or whatever it may be, and we think, okay, that's what the problem is. Once that problem's gone, then everything should be okay and life is wonderful. But for some reason, we still continue to feel empty. We still feel not quite there. So the mind tells us, well, let's rework the steps. Let's go to more meetings. Let's work with more people. Let's read more books. Let's do this. Let's do that. We do all that. And what we find out is it's self using spiritual principles to try to guide our life, only we don't know that's what's happening to us. And so we end up feeling empty in the fellowship. And at best, we don't drink, use, or act out again, but we never continue to grow. And some of the earlier writings of Bill W., he always said that the rest of the steps somehow keep us sober. But this one here that we're going to be looking at tonight, this one keeps us growing. And if I'm not growing, I'm going. And I've found that out the hard way through the years in Alcoholics Anonymous. I was 25 years sober when I came to this process of the work. Now, I've been through this book many times with many different people. I've been through it with Charlie, of Joe and Charlie. I've been thoroughly schooled in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous for many years. But I missed the entire thing because what happened was self grabbed a hold of me with lust, and it took off in the fellowship of AA. I was very embarrassed to admit any of these things, so I kept it a secret. And what happened was it began to rule and take over my life. And my ideas, my way of fixing this, I'll go back through the steps. I'll do this, what I've done, and this will go away. I had the outcome. And it never worked. And I couldn't understand. I was baffled. If this worked for alcoholism, why would it not work in this area of my life? And so what happened was, I met a guy in 2018 and I was in a very bad way. And he began to work me through this process of the work. I was pretty offended at it when we first started because he would read the book with me. And that just ran all over me. What I found out, it wasn't me. It ran all over self. Self didn't want any of this. It's like, we know the book. We know what it's saying. We've had Charlie, for God's sakes. We've had this. We've had that. But I continued to go along with this man and go along. And what happened was whenever we moved into more about alcoholism and we agnostics and then into how it works. And we really began to work these steps the way they're outlined in the book. And it was completely different than any way I'd ever worked them before. There were a lot of things that I had missed by not sticking to the letter of the book. And as a result of that, this returned in a big way. And oh my gosh. So when I come to this work, I commit to an open mind for a new experience. That's the first thing that I want to commit to when I come to this work, whether this is my first time ever going through it or whether I've been in the program for many years. And I sponsor a lot of people that have been in the program or the fellowship for many years and have worked the steps in the way they do, but they're still empty. So my commitment now is to love and honor and practice these teachings without judgment. I see that doesn't come natural to me at all. I commit to focus and heal and share this experience with other people. I use that set aside prayer a lot right through here. I really do. So my goal and taking this course and this commitment is to heal from prejudged ideas, this prejudice. And I learned that ideas is the key thing here. I practice this as a way of life for more oneness and awareness of my true inner self. This is what I come to find in the 11th step this time around. I really begin to connect with the sunlight of the spirit, the power that had been missing in me. It wasn't a belief. It was the power. It says the power, the belief in God plus the power, so there's more there. And so, today I absolutely feel at one with my creator. I'm mindful and I'm watchful of self-defeating ideas, moving through them, not hiding, denying, or trying to sweep it away or any of that stuff. I'm transparent. I'm straight up. Now, a lot of people don't like the way that this has happened for me because, when I'm asked the question, what is your belief in God, in Jesus Christ, in any of this stuff? My answer is through this process, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, I was transformed into a being. One of the writers of the New Testament says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. I never knew what that meant. That was a pretty cool saying, and I wanted to get the hell out of there, so I didn't pay a lot of attention. But that's exactly what's happened to me through this process of the book. And many of you that are sitting on here tonight as well. We've looked at watching. We have to watch, not listen, watch. We have to watch those thoughts constantly, because if I'm not, then something else begins to watch them. And what I found out is that's the condition. And it'll throw an idea at me and it'll sound like a pretty good idea, and I'll take action based on that. And the next thing you know, my reality is whatever decision I've made based on that idea that come to me, that was given to me by self. And I don't even really know what's happening. I just think I'm having a hell of a lot of bad luck. Well, I'm having a hell of a lot of bad luck, I promise you. So I get to step 10. I really begin to watch my thoughts. I start doing the process as we talked about last week on page 84. Now on 85, we pick it up and continue this week, and we're going to be looking at step 11. Now, I heard this crap around the fellowship for years. I did my 10-step nightly review. I can promise you the 10th step is not about a nightly review. Now, I did know that prior to coming to this work. And we're going to look at that tonight and see what the difference is. And if you've heard that, if you believe that, I can tell you believe that all you want. My book says something different. I'm going to go by what it says. And it tells me that the 10th step is a walking around step every day, not at night. And so we pick that up right in the middle of page 85, where it says it's easy to let up on the spiritual program of action, which we know today to be 4 through 9. One of the few times this book says it's going to be easy. It's easy to let up on the spiritual program of action, 4 through 9, which is located in 10. That's all 10 is. We looked at that last week. And rest on our laurels. We're headed for trouble if we do. It doesn't say I'm going to get drunk. It doesn't say I'm going to act out. But I'm going to do something stupid. I'm going to get sad. I'm going to get depressed. I'm going to make decisions based on self. I'm going to hurt somebody by my words, by my actions, by my deeds. Something's going to happen, and it's not going to be very good. It says I'm not cured of alcoholism. I'm recovered. I'm not cured. There's a big difference between those two. I think when people hear the word recover, they get very scared of that. But the book tells us all the way through, all the way from the very first promise in the book on the title page. We have recovered from a hopeless state of mind, not from alcohol, drugs, lust, whatever the problem is, from a hopeless state of mind that drove us to that to begin with. So it says what we really have is daily reprieve, contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Look at these two words, every day, not at night. We're still talking about the 10-step direction here. Every day, this is what step 10 is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts, keyword right there, thoughts. That must go with me constantly. If these thoughts are going with me constantly, then the thoughts of wanting to act out, to want to have my way, to deceive, to do all the things that I've always done, those thoughts no longer exist because now I'm on a higher system of thought. The book will begin to talk about a higher plane, and it talks about our thought life a lot right through here. Absolutely, our actions are going to be different. Why? Because our thoughts are different now. We no longer suffer from that what we did before. Self is not running the show in our life anymore. By this time, we have connected to the power. And so whenever I forgive others, And, I allow the blockage to be removed and the power flows into me. I've learned to forgive and love others. And I did that through an example that was given to me by somebody when I made amends. And so now I want to carry this into with my Creator. Here's what I want to remember as we move into this nightly review here in a few minutes. If I'm beating myself up as I do this nightly review, it's probably not me doing it. The condition is still there because it tells us to relax, take it easy, don't struggle. Now, these are things that we constantly reminds us of going through this. I have guys that will send me nightly reviews because that's a practice we do. We'll get into that here shortly. Man, they beat themselves up over, making a mistake throughout the day, or they got into a fear and it just stomped them. That's the condition doing the nightly review for you when that happens. That's not the spirit. This is about the spirit flowing to me and through me that I can connect and get right. It's not about me beating myself up over everything that happened throughout the day. So it says we can exercise our willpower along these lines. All we wish is the proper use of the will. Now, when I came to AA, and I said this last week, they told me that willpower would never be my friend again. Me and Will, our relationship was over. It was done. It would never serve me again. But we see here that's a lie. As long as my will is aligned with his will, it's the proper use of the will. It says we can exercise our willpower along these lines, all we wish. It doesn't sound like Will is never going to be a friend of mine again. It sounds like he's very much going to be a friend of mine as long as I align it with the Creator's. So much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from him, capital H, not self. I'm no longer receiving inspiration and direction from that which defeated me and destroyed me. I'm receiving it from him now, who has all knowledge and power. I was absolutely powerless and hopeless. There was no power flowing through me at that time. And what little bit there was, it was destructive. Keywords right here. If we have carefully followed directions up to this point, as outlined in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, look at the reward. We have begun to sense the flow of his spirit into us. I don't know about you, but that hypes this dude up right here because, man, that's what I was. I've missed that. I was thirsty for that for so long. To some extent, we have become God conscious. And where I came from in the religion I grew up in, that might not have been what they said, but what I heard was that was never possible, ever, until the day you died. And then there was a mediator you were going to have to meet with. And then if you all of this. I don't believe that. I've walked as close to God as any man I know through this process. And I feel that the flow of that spirit into me and through me every day. I make a lot of mistakes, but I don't beat myself up for those anymore. I look at those as learning opportunities to grow and to move on and advance in life. It says to some extent we have become God conscious. We have begun to develop this vital sixth sense. Now we know about the senses. The sixth sense is kind of like that rocketing into the fourth dimension he talks about. But look what he says, we must go further, and that means more action. Step 11 suggests prayer and meditation. That are only two ways of conscious contact with God. That's not the only ways. That's two of the ways. Prayer and meditation. We shouldn't be shy on this matter of prayer. My question becomes, am I? Am I still shy whenever it comes to the matter of prayer, whether it's with me or whether it's allowed with somebody else? I have people all the time. I went to my company party, Christmas party here just a few days, and those guys, they all know me kind of rough and tough, and I like to thump them around a little bit and joke with them, give them a whole lot of hell. But the dispatcher knows, and a lot of the other guys know that I walk a spiritual path. So they asked me to pray. Will you pray for the company party? I said, of course I will. Absolutely. And some of those guys, it was just like it freaked them out to hear me up there praying. Now, I didn't do it so that they would all think I was a nice guy or any of this. I did that because I'm not shy on this matter anymore. There was a day I wouldn't have done that for anybody. Nobody. Look what it says. Better men than we are using it constantly. I believe that. I believe that all along. It works if we have the proper attitude and work at it. So it tells me there, I'm going to be the one to take some action. I'm going to have first a proper attitude. Next, I'm going to have to do the work here. I used to run around saying all the time, got to work this out. God's got this. No worries. God's got it under control. And I had an old timer from Oklahoma tell me in a meeting one time, he said, son, if you pray for potatoes, you better bring a hoe because you know who's going to be doing the digging, right? And I just laughed it off. I come to understand what that man's talking about. I'm the one going to be doing the work. He says it would be vague about this matter, yet we believe we can make some definite and valuable suggestions. That's an important sentence to me. Bill and the other boys that wrote this book and the 100 and all of this, they didn't know any more about meditation at that time than a lot of us know about it now. But they said we can make some definite and valuable suggestions which have worked for us. And he's going to lay it out right here. Now, I'm going to look at this first through this paragraph. Then I'm going to ask my friend Ashley if she will bring the template that I use with everybody from day one. Don't care if you've been here one day, 30 years. It doesn't matter. Most people are not using this as a regular practice in the program. Or 10. Big mistake if you do that. Promise you. Big mistake. We're headed for trouble if we do. So when we retire at night, not when we go to bed, not when the eyes are about to shut. I used to try to meditate right as I got into bed and laid down and began to relax. And I promise you I'd fall asleep before the meditation was over, or it'd turn into a sexual fantasy and a whole lot of other crazy shit would begin to happen. This is when we retire at night. For me, this is after dinner, sometimes between the time that I relax in the evening and get ready for, an evening of TV or whatever is going on. I want to take about 7 or 8 minutes to sit down and do this. And I do this by email with the sponsor every night. And the guys that I work with, they do one with me. So not when we go to bed, when we retire at night, we're going to constructively review our day. For one thing, I'm not going to be looking at my wife's day and all the things that she done, or my son, or any of this, any of y'all. This is about our day, period. Not me and my sponsor. This is our day. This is what I'm reviewing. And notice the word constructively, not destructively. I have guys will send that to me and man, they're just destructive in the way that they just, I've done this and I got into this fear and I should have done this and I should have done that and I could have done that. I could have, ran more, hung out more, did this, did that. This is about constructively reviewing the day. Now look at these questions, and we've looked at this quite a bit already. Here they are again. Were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? Remember, that's all we're watching for in step 10 all day long. Those are the defects we found out about in step 4. So that's step 4 right there. Do we owe an apology? Remember, that's our 9th step, making amends, sincerely apologizing. These are the questions that I'm going to ask myself. Have I kept something to myself that should have been discussed with another person at once? That's step 5. Remember how we did that when we discussed that with another human being. Now we're bringing it to a different level. I'm looking at this. Did I do this throughout my day? I'm keeping this on a daily basis now. I'm not letting this all fall up like I did for so many years by not consistently doing this in the program. Were we kind and loving toward all? Big question right there. I remember asking my sponsor after some time of doing this, do you think I'm doing this question right? He said, well, I don't know. Why would you ask something like that? And I said, because every night I'm writing yes. And he said, well, are you? I said, I think so. And that's a big change for me. I promise you. He said, what about inwardly? Man, that hit me in the gut. Because there are times that I'd be on the phone with somebody and I might be talking pretty decent to them. But in my mind, it was judge, jury, executioner, and I was hanging their ass to a tall tree. That's not kind and loving. I want to look at this question 2 ways, not only outward. I want to look at this question inward. And I want to take a look at that. And I want to add me to this mix. How have I treated me today? People say, well, it's not about you. It's absolutely about me and the way that I love me today. Absolutely. Do I beat myself up for simple mistakes I've made? If me and her have a few words, do I walk around with my head held down and feel so guilty and run back and kiss tail until, everything is mellowed out again and there's a little peace on the horizon? I don't do all that anymore. I make amends. I move on. I made a mistake. It's a lesson, not a life sentence. Was I kind and loving toward all, including me? What could I have done better? Could I have prayed more? Could I have reached out to somebody? Could I have 10-stepped the way that I've learned to 10-step here? Could I have called somebody? What could I have done better? Could I have turned to God? What about my sponsor? Could I have talked to him? Or did I just make decisions based on self and I ran out and did what I wanted to do? And then I ran back to him feeling guilty, hoping that, all would be well and we could move on. Or were we thinking of ourselves? Most of the time, I group this into two questions. Or were we thinking of what we could do for others? Notice the word thinking. Anytime I'm thinking about doing something for others, I don't think much about me. I automatically begin to pack into the stream of life instead of taking away. I'm not catching all the fish and freezing them all up for Dave. I'm wanting to pass them around. I'm wanting to share. That's not like me. That doesn't come natural to me. But once I've had this experience, it's very much natural to me. But notice what it says. We must be careful. This is the only must in this paragraph of the evening review. That's the only must that's there. We must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, and morbid reflection. Those guys that send me those self-defeating 10 steps and all the things that they've done wrong and bad, I always bring them right back to here. Be careful, because you're drifting into worry, remorse, and morbid reflection. And when you do that, that's going to diminish your usefulness to others because you're thinking only about yourself. You can't think about others. So after making our review, we asked God's forgiveness. That's our prayer. Now, for me, there's a big difference between asking for God's forgiveness and asking God to forgive me. As there's a big difference in those two. For one, if I come and ask you to forgive me, it's probably because I've done something wrong to you. Now, I think I'm capable of doing that to the Creator. I've done something wrong for him, so I need to beg for his forgiveness or ask him to forgive me. That's not what that means to me today at all. On page 67, in the prayer work is outlined in the 4th step before you move into the turnarounds. We're asked to forgive everyone, never to be brought up or charged against again before we even move into those turnarounds. Because if we don't, what's going to happen is when we get in those, self is going to bring back that unforgiveness of what they've done. And I'm going to miss that experience. It's not going to be totally open and free. If that's required of me there, why wouldn't the same thing be required of God here for me on a daily basis? We're talking about the day. Never to be brought up or charged against again. Once I asked for forgiveness, that's it. It's said and done. If I've done it earnest from the heart, I'm not asking God to forgive me. What can I do to make this right with you, God? I'm not doing that. I'm asking for forgiveness. I let it all go, and I move on helping a brother. A man once told me, you want to know how to seek God? Help your brother. And I've found that to be absolutely true. But notice how it says, because most of us do this. Most of us ask for forgiveness or we ask God to forgive us, however you do it. But notice that next word, and. So that means there's more. And this is what most of us miss. Inquire what corrective measures should be taken. Now, I never inquire about that. I just say, God, please forgive me, or God, I ask your forgiveness, and I just kind of move on. I don't worry about it no more. God's got this, right? My book says, no, I need to inquire what corrective measures should be taken here. And so here I generally say a prayer. I review my day, and I look at what corrective measures I could have done. What could I have done better? How could I have corrected it? I need to be careful here because self will jump in here, and it will want to give me ideas on how to correct things with people before I talk to a sponsor, before I meditate, before I do any of that. That's a bad idea. So I need to be very careful on this question right here. So I'm going to ask my friend Ashley if she would put the template up on the screen. This is what I give my guys from day one. And this is what they do. They email this to me every night without fail. We don't have any days off on 10 and 11, starting in this process with me. And it goes like this. Look at your book. Look at the first question. Were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? I want to prayerfully take a look at this. Question 2, same as in your book. Do I want an apology? Number 3, have we kept something to ourselves which should have been discussed with another person at once? I like to have bracketed along the side of that, secrets. What did I hold inside today? Did I take extra looks at a woman down at the store? I really didn't want to 10-step that with anybody. Did I say some things that was kind of rough with some of the people I know? But I really don't want to admit to a lot of that. What did I hold secret within my own self? Did I look at me as a piece of crap today? And I haven't really discussed that with someone else. I need to bring all of that out right here. Was I kind and loving toward all? Remember, inwardly as well as outwardly. Briefly, we write about our day. What could we have done better? And it goes right down the list, just the same as you see here on page 86. So that's what we do beginning from day one. I know a lot of people that have been around for a long time that don't do this as a practice. I think it's a very bad idea not to do this daily. In fact, I know it is. And so most of the people that I meet that have struggled in the program for years or the fellowship for years and can't seem to get sober and stay that way, once they're introduced to 10 and 11, that seems to be life-changing. Now, you have to be careful here because a lot of people will grab a hold of this and they'll begin to have a new experience, and it's a beautiful one, and they won't want to follow up with the rest of the work. I don't hold on to people like that. I cut them loose quick. This isn't about just 10 and 11. Yes, this is very important. Don't get me wrong, but there is another process through this book, starting way back over at the front, to come all the way through and do this work, holding on to 10 and 11 as we go. It's powerful. You add those two together, and I promise you, the sunlight of the Spirit will take on a whole new meaning for us. So that's the evening portion of it. Let's look at the morning. On awakening, let us think of the 24 hours ahead. Usually when I wake up, the first thing I do is I don't start thinking about 24 hours ahead. If you're like me, I'm a middle-aged man now. I like to get up, use the restroom first. I like to get some coffee. I like to hang out. I like to do a few things before I sit down into this practice. It's just me. This is what I do. But at some point before I go too far in my day, I'm going to want to think about the 24 hours ahead. My friend Charlie of Joe and Charlie used to tell me all the time, David, you get people, they wake up in the morning. First thing they'll do is they'll jump in the shower, they'll clean up, they'll groom their hair, they'll do whatever they need to do, brush their teeth, hygiene. They do all of this hygiene through the day. They do nothing inwardly. They hit the door running. And he said, that's going to be bad for you if you do that. And the old fool was right, because I did that for so many years and I never stopped to take a look at any of this stuff. Bad idea. Bad idea. And so on awakening, I want to think of the 24 hours ahead. I want to consider my plans for the day. But before I begin, I want to start this with a prayer, just as it says here. We ask God to direct our thinking, asking especially that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, and self-seeking motives. So these are time-based emotions. Anytime I see self-pity, it's referring to the past. Anytime I see self-seeking, it's referring to the future. And anytime I see that word dishonesty, that is the present lie, that I am the self, that I am this, I am that, I am these things. None of that is true. I'm not in the past. I'm not in the future. If I can hold myself in the now right here, I'm going to have an experience every day. Notice how he says this, that we be divorced. Now, I've been divorced a time or two. I'm sure probably some of you guys have as well. In order for me to be divorced, I must have been married to something. Now we get to know what that is. I've been married to self this entire time, and I never even knew it. Now, I want to ask that I be divorced from self-pity, small s, dishonest, self-seeking, small s, motives. Under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance. Look at that promise. I couldn't have done that the day I walked in here for nothing. And after being here 25 years, I could not have done that. I could not have employed my mental faculties with assurance. There is no way. I destroyed everything that I thought about because it all became action. After all, God gave us brains to use. I forget that sometimes. I really do. I use my brain for a lot of things, but I don't ever do this. Why? I mean, I've been around here for 25 years and read this book faithfully. It's not like this was new to me. It's like, oh my God, I've never seen that before. I've seen this many times. I just never done it. But look what he says, our thought life. That's the key words. The thought life will be placed on a much higher plane now. I'm operating from a different place with my thoughts than I was before. Before I was in the lower level. Now I'm on the higher level. I'm on a much higher plane with my thoughts. Absolutely, my actions are going to be different. They have to be. They have to be. Look at what it says, when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. That's what was the problem all along. It was my thinking. It was never cleared of wrong motives. I thought it was my fault that they wasn't cleared of wrong motives. I began to beat myself about that. And that wasn't it to begin with. We began to start loving ourselves, is my experience with this. And I used to hear that said, and oh, I hated that. Don't talk that kind of crap. You know, that's all bull. But I believe now that we come to a place where an ancient hatred becomes a current love. And that's what's happened to me here. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So in thinking about our day, we may face indecision. We may not be able to determine which course to take. Here we ask God. We just don't run off and do that anymore and hope for the best on the consequences like we've done for so long. We're on a different plane now. We're not operating from the same system of thought that we was when we started this process. It says we ask God for inspiration, intuitive thought, keyword, or decision. I never done that. I just took action based on whatever I felt was the best thing for me to do. That's not a good idea. So when it says don't struggle, in other words, it's telling me don't worry about an answer. You don't have to figure that out, David. This will come to you intuitively if you will shut that hole in your face and get quiet and just wait to see what happens. If nothing happens, nothing comes, that's probably something I'm not supposed to be doing. So I've learned to quit that. I do that with meetings. My head told me all the time, oh my God, you better hurry up and get to the meeting. You're going to fall out. This went on endlessly forever. And I went through the process. I'm like, man, I'm tired of going to meetings every day. I'm tired of it. My head was, oh man, you better quit thinking like that. You're going to get in bad trouble with that kind of thought. And anybody in the fellowship would support that and say, oh my God, yes, that's a bad deal. But something inside of me kept telling me, you don't have to be there every day. Help your brother when he needs it. But you got a life, man. Go live. Do the things you want to do. You enjoy riding motorcycles. You enjoy fishing. You enjoy hanging out, going to sweat lodges with your elders at the ceremonies. Do that stuff. No. I got to work with people. I got to be at a meeting. That's self-talking. Slowly, I started easing away from those ideas. And more that peace just began to flood me. It's like you won't see me in a whole lot of meetings anymore. I love to go. I love the people. I don't have to be there all the time anymore. I don't. I got a life to live. This is not my life. This is a way of life for me. And this is what I found through this process. So it says we relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. Wow. I've struggled my whole life. Good God. We're often surprised, not once in a while, not every now and again, often. I've often been surprised about some things, but some of this wasn't any of it, I promise you. Look at this, how the right answers will come after we've tried this for a while. Now notice that for a while. I want this yesterday. I want this right now. How come I can't have what he has? People tell me all the time, man, that didn't happen for me over there. Well, you showed up with 10 names on your inventory. You know, I mean, I hate it that you didn't get the results that you were looking for because of the work you didn't do. But there's a process here, and it's thorough. And if we do this, and what we read on the last page, if we have carefully followed direction, we begin to sense the flow of his spirit into us. If that hasn't happened for you, I hate that. Thank you for helping me to enhance on mine. The right answers will come after we've tried this for a while, not immediately. So if we do this for a little while and you think, oh my God, this isn't working, nothing like what he said it would or nothing like what they said, the book tells me right here, hang around for a little while. I promise you this is going to happen. Because what used to be the top 87, what used to be the hunch and the occasional inspiration, occasionally I had inspiration, but not very, but it says gradually. See, that doesn't say immediately. That doesn't say pretty quick after you finish the first 9 steps. It doesn't say any of that. It says gradually after we have tried this for a while, it gradually becomes a working part of the mind. It just does. Because self is not working that part of my mind anymore. Spirit is now. I'm connected. I'm in the power. I'm flowing. Beautiful, beautiful thing. Well, being still inexperienced and having just made conscious contact with God, it's not probable that I'm going to be inspired all the time. And I wasn't for a long time. You know, I wasn't inspired all the time. It says that we may pay for this presumption in all sorts of absurd actions and ideas. Self can very much slip back in right here if we're not watching this pretty closely and really sticking to this process of the book the way that we know. But look at what it says. Nevertheless, we will find that our key word right here, this is what defeated us our entire life, our thinking. And here it is again. Not immediately, not pretty quick, not after the first 9 steps, as time passes. He's told me 3 times right there. This is going to happen after a while. This is gradually going to become a working part of the mind. And now it says, as time passes, my thoughts will be more and more on the plane of inspiration. I come to rely on it. That's beautiful. I rely on spirit today. I don't rely on self anymore. My life is so much easier than it ever has been. I'm not suffering from things that haven't happened to me yet anymore. My sponsor, Kirk, he said that all the time. David, you're suffering from things that haven't happened to you. You need to quit that. You need to quit that. Gradually, this becomes a working part of the mind, and it has. We usually conclude the period of meditation. Now, this is still in the morning process with a prayer. That means that I'm going to do a little praying here. That I be shown all through the day what my next step is to be. That's a prayer. That we be given whatever we need to take care of any such problems. That's a gift. That's something I'm given from spirit to take care of any such problems. We ask, there's another prayer, especially for freedom from self-will, small s. You bet I'm going to be praying for that every day because that's what's beat me to begin with. And it says we are careful. Man, anytime it tells me in this book to be careful, I better be careful. I am careful to make no request for myself only. We may ask for ourselves, however, and this is the condition, if others will be helped. That's the only way that I need to be praying today. I do ceremonial practices with the sweat. You've heard me talk about that quite a bit. One of our rounds toward the end, at least in the Choctaw ceremonies, is ourselves. We pray for ourselves. And I always had a lot of trouble with this because what I read in this book is you don't pray for yourself. But the part I miss is you may ask for yourself, however, if others will be helped. And so the elder will always throw this out. And it's amazing how he knows this because he's not in any 12-step fellowship program. He says the key to this is you can't pray for yourself unless somebody else will be helped. And if I hear you voicing that out, I'm going to shut you down in the middle of it. And so that really teaches me to practice praying for me, helping other people. And that's a beautiful prayer to get in the habit of right there. I think as we go along in the program, so many of us forget this. This is super, super important. We're careful to never pray for our own selfish sins. Many of us have wasted a lot of time doing that. Man, I wasted a lot of time in prayer because self was the one doing the praying. It wasn't David. Wow. I never seen that, ever. It doesn't work. You can easily see why. I'm praying for me. Yeah. It's what I want and what I need. Help me be a better husband. Help me be a better father. Help me, help me, help me, help me. Them all sound like good prayers, right? Well, I'm asking for me to have greater things here. This will happen automatically for me if I will just do the things it's asking for me to do here. I don't have to go looking for that, praying for that. So if circumstances warrant, we ask our wives and friends to join us in morning meditation. I've done that. If we belong to a religious denomination, which requires definite morning devotion, and I do not, but many of the men that I work with do, we attend to that also. If not members of religious bodies, this is me. We sometimes select and memorize a few set prayers, which emphasize the principles we have been discussing. The third step prayer, the seventh step prayer. That's always a very good one. I like to start with a prayer like the third step prayer and then sit quietly for just a little bit. I sit in reflection of my day, and then I consider from page 86 on awakening to the end of that, what we're fixing to come up on here in 88. I consider and do what it asks me to do. It's also helpful to incorporate a meditation of the bedevilments right here. I do that. I want to go back and take a look at them. Where am I at in my personal relationships now versus where I was at whenever I began to do this work? What about my emotional natures? Am I prey to that anymore on a daily basis? Am I still running around in a lot of fear, running around talking to everybody like I got it all together inside the program? But when you get me alone, I'm a scared little boy. I don't want to talk about certain things in my life. I want to talk about, how I won't let anybody get close to me because I don't like love, because I've been rejected a lot of the times, Well, I don't want to talk about stuff like that. Why I've been alone all these years in my life and why I've been isolated and this prison. I don't want to talk about that kind of stuff. Let's talk about God. Let's talk about these prayers. I want to look at them. Am I prey to emotional misery and depression today in any way? And if I am, I want to seek to be free from that. And I usually finish it up with some silence. I do something like the seventh step prayer. For me, it's the third. I do a lot of the third step prayer. I really do. That was a prayer that changed my life. So I use that one quite often. I've learned to do that in a different way over the last probably, 3 to 4 months, actually. And it's called silent prayer. And what I do is I will break the prayer down into sentences and I'll pause in between. God, and I stop. I'm not asking for my sponsor. I'm not asking for David. I'm not asking for my wife, my friends, God. And I reflect on that for a minute. I offer self to thee, and I stop and I reflect on that. Am I truly offering self? Honestly. Or are there some ideas I still want to hang on to? I got a few things I still yet want to do. And I go through that entire prayer like that. Powerful, powerful way to pray. And I've learned that through this process of 11 step, because really this is just an amplified version of 3, 7, all of that. So there are helpful books also. Suggestions about these may be obtained from one's priest, minister, or rabbi. Be quick to see where religious people are right. Notice that doesn't say be quick to see that they are right. For so long, if a man like that talked to me, it must be gospel. He must be a holy man. Who am I to question anything on him? I don't believe that anymore. It says be quick to see where they are right, not that they are right. Big difference in that for me. Make use of what they offer, and I do. But if it doesn't suit me, if it doesn't set well with the spirit, I don't use it anymore. I don't have to do that today. Pretty cool. As we go through the day, so I don't know about you, but after we've done this, as I go through the day, sometimes I'll get a little agitated or doubtful. I'll snap at my wife or one of the co-workers or something like this. But notice it says ask. There's that prayer again. For the right thought or action. I've never done that consistently. I've never done that. And I definitely didn't do this. Constantly remind myself that I am no longer running the show. Self is no longer running the show. Humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, thy will be done. We are then in much less danger of excitement. Man, this is beautiful. Look at this. I used to live through me every single day, even in the fellowship, even after going through the steps. I'm in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, foolish decisions. I lived like that sober for a long time. We become more efficient. We don't tire out so easily. Man, I got energy. I mean, it's unreal sometimes how much energy I have. You can ask some of the guys I work with. I'll wear them out some days, man. It's like, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. You know, it's like we don't tire out so easily anymore, for we're not burning up energy foolishly as we did when self was trying to arrange life to suit self. What a promise. That has nothing to do with me. It works, it really does. So we alcoholics and sex addicts and whatever you may be here tonight, we're undisciplined. We let God discipline us in the simple way we've just outlined. I hate that word discipline. I was disciplined as a kid to the point to where it drove me to kill a man. I don't like discipline. But what I've come to learn is that word can be looked at much differently than physical discipline. It's a spiritual discipline, almost like a discipleship. I didn't like that word either, but I'll take it over the discipline the way that I looked at it before. So I'm going to let God disciple me in the simple way we have just outlined through these 87 pages of this book. And our book says that's not all. There's actually more action. Faith without works is dead. The next chapter is entirely devoted to step 12. So that's my experience with the 11th step in this practice. It's a beautiful way to live. If you're thinking about doing this process, if you haven't ever done it, or if you're new, or if you've been around for a long time and you're wanting to do it, I encourage you, please get with somebody. There's a lot of men and women on here that can help you go through this process, have a new experience, connect to the power, and live free emotionally. So good to be here tonight. Great to see everybody. Thanks for letting me share.
This concludes David's share on tonight's chapter, but we encourage you to keep listening as he answers questions from the audience and shares additional experience, strength, and hope.
David, there's one thing that I read very frequently, and it can either be a complicated sentence or it could be very simple. And I'm just going to ask you just to explain to me where it says on 86 of what we could pack into the stream of life. Does that mean, in my terms, busying myself to distract myself from the reason I'm reading this page? Or is it something slightly more different to what I've just described to you?
Thank you, Michael. Always good to see you, brother. You know that I come to learn that I'm either packing into or I'm taking away. I'm either packing in joy, peace, serenity, love, acceptance, right actions, or self is still living through me, and it's taking, it's wanting, it's doing all of these things. I heard my sponsor say one time, and I definitely can't relate it as an immaculate as him, is that this book was written by somebody else that has the stream of life. Bill was kind of like I was. I like to rob stuff from people and call it my own, you know. But one of the things that he would talk about is taking from the stream of life. And I think as addicts, that's what we did for so long. Now it's asking me, what can I pack into it? But the question before it really sets up that answer for me. Was I thinking of myself most of the time? Was self thinking of itself most of the time? Or was I thinking more of what I could give rather than take? So when I do the nightly review, that's how I like to look at that question. If I was in a conversation with my wife, was I trying to dominate and take control of that? Was I taking from the stream, or was I packing in? Was I listening? Was I considerate? I look at the stream of life with each one of the things that are going on with me in this review. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's my experience on that, brother.
Yeah, it certainly does, David. Thank you ever so much, man. Take care. God bless.
David, you mentioned that some people will come up with 10 names when they do their inventory, meaning they're inferred that that's too few. You expected more names, but just thinking over time, when people spend decades in 12-step programs, inventory tends to have less and less names, I would imagine. That happened to me. My first inventory had 50 pages, but as I did this fourth inventory over time and different fellowships, the number of pages diminished and the number of names and stuff. So just your comments on that. Would you expect an old timer to come up with as many names on their inventory as a newcomer?
Thank you, Maria. You asked some great questions. In fact, I pondered a lot on one that you asked last week, but let me give my experience on what you just now asked. On page 64 of our book, at the bottom paragraph, it says resentment is the number one offender. It destroys more of us than anything. But it says not only, from it stem all forms of spiritual disease. Not only have we been mentally and physically ill, we've been spiritually sick, yada, yada, goes on down. But it says we listed people, institutions, and principles with whom we were, not whom we are, whom we were angry. And so when we come through this process for a new experience, one of the things that I encourage the people to do is to look at where they were angry, not where they are. There's a big difference in the way that that's worded. There were for me. Now, for me, I had a lot. But I think this is something that I don't just think about and write. This is something that I come at prayerfully. And whatever intuitively comes to me is what I put down. Now, if yours is 10, it may be 10. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. But I am saying if I am to look at whom I were angry with, people, institutions, and principles, and I have to remember that principles is much about self-hatred as anything. I'm too fat, don't have enough hair, I'm never going to be good enough, no, I'm this. I guarantee you I'm going to come up with more than 10 things right there, probably, most likely. So I want to look at where we were angry, not at where we are. So that's my answer to that. Thank you.
The only, I like this all, we're working the steps and doing all this. And, I've been in AA for 35 years, been around SA for 25 and still not walking on water yet. The halo's tarnished. But, it says in our big book that it just comes without any thought or effort on our part. And that is the miracle of it. And what I like about that saying, I think Bill Wilson put the ego up against the wall there. Yeah, we could do everything we possibly could do, take inventories, go to meetings and blah, blah, blah. But in the end, sometimes I just use the word to my sponsees as patiently waiting. This isn't nothing cut and dried that if I do all 12 steps, I'm completely healed. That's it. I walk away because I'm not in Perfectionists Anonymous either. But, I know, recovery, first of all, it takes a time. Yes, you have to do these things. But as Bill Wilson read, and he quoted Carl Jung when he wrote that letter to him, and Jung says that our psyche heals ourselves. That our psyche heals ourselves in its own time, not in the time that we want it done. So, I've been doing this for a few years, and believe me, like I said, I'm not totally healed. But it just sounds like sometimes when I'm listening, it sounds too driven. Like it doesn't give that space. Maybe just getting down on my knees in the morning asking for help. Of course, you have to do the work. But if I get the help behind me to do what the work is in front of me. Because how could I have, like what Carl Jung says, how do you know you even have, what gave you the good thoughts that to do proceed with the work? How do you know those good thoughts even came from your own self? So what I'm saying basically in the end is it's my higher power that does all this work. That gives me the power, the strength to look ahead, gives me the power to stay sober, gives me the power to have have consciousness of these things within me. And for me, it's just not driven. And if I fill out all this stuff, I'm going to be healed. Yes, these are all little things in being helped.
I absolutely agree with what you said, and I appreciate it as well. Some of the things that I heard there is my higher power gives me, my higher power does this for me, my higher power. For me, once that I've come through this process and I've connected with power, there is no me and power. It's power. And I don't see separateness there as I once did. Now, the willingness that I do through the process of this work leads me into a higher conscious contact with this creator. And I'm not saying that if we fill this out, you're going to have a life-changing experience. But my book tells me very clearly, if I don't, what's going to happen? And my experience shows that it's absolutely going to happen that way. So once again, if your sponsor tells you something different than what I've shared my experience on here tonight, absolutely listen to what your sponsor has to say. But if I get the idea in my head that I'm going to do anything, only if I do certain things for a higher power, my book tells me nowhere in here to get on my knees in the morning and pray. That's not a direction here. I don't see that nowhere. And if I'm wrong, please bring that to my attention and I'll quit saying that. I promise you. That's something I heard in the fellowship. That's something that I tried to practice. Even though I didn't want to do it, I did it anyway. Was it helpful? Yes. Did it bring recovery? No. So I'm going to stick to the directions of the book and the outcome will be what it is. But the outcome for me is that I connected with power. I'm not separate from that anymore. Thanks.